with Forever and Goddess Gang, since those were released as singles and they were released long before the Sharecropper's Daughter. What was the strategy of that with the delay of not having an album and putting out these songs and making videos and all this stuff, but no project?
Couple things. The project was obviously still in development at that time, but can't be gone for too long. You have to put something out, and it just so happens that I had 2 dope songs that were ready to go. So like you throw it out there and like let this sustain you while you're writing, and then get the buzz up, and it's the perfect promo tool for the new project. And I think too, a lot of people were releasing like singles and stuff. They just release singles. They release songs, and that's enough. Albums have shrunken in size. They've, taken on like different iterations. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, people are doing 5-song projects, 7-song projects, or just dropping a song. And so it like, we can be creative with the way that we do things. But that project, it took a while for me to write and rewrite and, kind of analyze and, figure out how exactly I wanted to do it. So it had been a while since I was supposed to actually put out a project. So it was like, okay, we're going to put out these singles. And it just so happens that it was enough to get me going, seeing the response. Like sometimes that's also important too, like seeing the response and I'm in the right place. Now I can keep, producing and fleshing this out to what it's supposed to be.
So as somebody that had recorded and put out and had so much material, was that a big adjustment to be like, yo, we're just going to put out some singles and see what happens? Like how, I know that the reality of doing it, but then the reality of maybe the anxiety, the nervousness, the wonder, the concern, because that's not something that somebody who had followed you for years before that, I was kind of like, oh, this is a different approach. And,
right.
Yeah.
And I have to be able to adjust, because it was an adjustment, getting on the Rhymesayers team and not being able to just drop as much as I wanted to. And then it was an adjustment having this extra, this additional entity, having eyes on the project and it was a little bit more pressure, admittedly, creating something. Because when you have your supporters, you put out your music and they love everything that you do. But I was going to be my reach was going to be broadened. It was broadened. I very particularly wanted to do something that was different, a different take on, what I like my previous subject matter. And I knew that I wanted to do this, but I wanted to do it right. And I knew I wanted to tell the story, but it's also this balance between what's too much and what we decide to remain private. So there was a lot of things to consider. So it was a huge adjustment to go so long without putting out a project, but I was doing so much. I had released the mixtape, the Metamorphosis mixtape. I was dropping a lot of like other like kind of one-off singles and stuff. So it was fine because I had stuff out there. I was still moving.
Okay.
But it was still like, oh my God, I got to put out an album. This doesn't feel right. I was doing like 1 a year, sometimes 2 a year.
Right. So. Now on Goddess Gang, you were talking about you're only a quarter human. Did you figure out what the other parts are yet? Did you identify those yet?
Not yet. We're still working on that, but I've been saying I'm a starseed, so I have extraterrestrial DNA in there somewhere.
Speaking of that journey of the starseed, did you? I don't know if I looked it up or something, but a while ago, or I think this was last year, there's a book of that same name now. Did you know it?
No. What?
Yeah. I think it must have come up because I listened to your old stuff periodically, and that came up somehow, and I was like, wait a minute, I thought, isn't this, because I was like, man, this is Sa-Roc's album. Why is it a book? I was like, oh, she did a book, but it's not from you. So I was like,
What?
yeah, you should look it up.
I'm definitely gonna look it up.
You should look that up.
Yes, exactly.
You
Wow.
look that up. But speaking of your older material, that one I liked a lot. But I think it's probably my favorite on there. And that one, I liked how you had the rap references, but also a lot of the scratching. That song, I really enjoyed it because I liked that you were shouting out Rakim, but also Moni Love. So it was a nice range of artists that you had mentioned on there. So for you, and being from DC with go-go and funk and rap and all these different things, what effect do you think all these different sonic musical influences have had on you creatively, personally, so that when you do I Am the I Am, you kind of reference and revisit a lot of them?
Just music in general, and I think DC in general, like had a lot of like just a myriad cultures and musical sounds and influences, and it was a big part of my development. And I think it influenced me to look at writing and look at music in a different way. Like maybe a willingness to be experimental with different sounds and samples, and just not afraid to put all of my little stuff imbue all of my little things into the music, or imbue the music with all of my little things. And because I will be Soul Messiah, he knows that I'm a huge Jimmy fan or whatever, so like he'll put like little rock elements, or he listens to the things I'm into. So I'll talk about Octavia Butler during a show. I'll do a go-go, a little go-go, not a set, but like I'll break down one of my songs and use like a RE, sample or something like that. So
the wickedest band alive.
Exactly, So
I've seen them many a time.
Really?
Oh,
Are you from DC?
Maryland.
Oh, you're from Maryland. Okay. Yay.
Maryland.
Okay, yeah. So like so for me, like, and then I feel like it gives me license to be the eclectic person that I am. I have all of these things that kind of shape me, and it's important for me to let those things shine through me, whether it's through my lyrics or my presence in the game or my clothing or whatever. But DC, as much as I felt it was so small, it was such a huge part of fueling my creativity, because there was so much creativity just flowing through there.
No doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
So what that's how I got to the Mirage, because I was living in Maryland. I grew up in Maryland. So yes. Went to many a go-go concert. But that being said, what precipitated the move for you to Atlanta?
I just wanted to go at that point, and I originally wanted to move to New York. New York the rent was too damn high. I was like, I can't afford this. Like, this is not going to happen. And then when I started researching, I saw that, in order to get a good place, you had to have a real estate broker. And it was just like, no, like, and New York is like, I love that city so, so much. And that's really where I was intending on going. And it just was cost prohibitive. And at the time my sisters were living down in Atlanta, and my brother ended up moving down around the same time I did. So I was like, okay, this would be good to have like family down there. It's, I can afford it, and it's a new like space. And and I met Soul Messiah down in Atlanta as well. So it was serendipitous.
And with meeting Soul Messiah, what made that relationship click to where that's, from what I understand from reading stuff back in the day, that was more of how or why you really started pursuing music? Is that A, is that true? But then B, if it is true, why? What was it about meeting him and being in Atlanta that made that actually manifest?
I was searching when I moved to Atlanta. So I was open to really anything that would point me in the direction of where my future would end up. And I've always been interested in the creative arts. So that was something was always going to happen with that. Since I was a child, I've always been, gravitated towards theater and singing and writing poetry and all of that. But it was Atlanta, as I said, they had an incredible independent hip hop scene in Atlanta. And so Messiah, who was, already well respected, well established, he was working with tons of artists at the time, dope artists who I was like, yo, this is mind blowing. I've never heard anything like this. Production is dope. It's unique. It was just like the new environment again, that travel thing. Like my mind just kind of like opened up, and being in these spaces where, it was just, I had music and arts like all around me. And I'd never before had access to someone with a recording studio and, access to just put a beat together and all of that. So it just made it more possible for me. And again, if you've heard other interviews, you probably heard, I was just kind of like playing around and I wanted to hear myself record it. But I think what pushed me is that I was always going to festivals and fundraisers, for political prisoners and, monthly showcases. There was music all around me that I think that was kind of pushing me towards what I was supposed to be doing. And it made it easier for me to make that decision. Even though I had no idea I was going to be doing it full time, I was just like, this is cool. And I feel like this is a space where I can experiment with this and it'll be accepted and welcomed. And it was. So, and he was very encouraging in that he heard the potential in the first things that I recorded. And he's in Aries. So Aries are like very passionate about whatever it is they believe to be true. So he's not going to give up. He's like, yo. And he was like, it was rare because not in Atlanta, but like, I think in, the bigger world of hip hop, for a producer to be excited about like a woman MC. Like I want, cause he had worked with other, women MCs before from Atlanta. And he was like, yo, like you'll be perfect to do this. Like, let's go. Like you're needed. And so I was like, okay, cool. For sure. Yeah. I'm by no means like super latched on to the idea, but like, okay, we'll try it, and it turned into something.
So I'm an Aries too, so maybe that's where Soul Messiah and I link on that. But my question is, being passionate is one thing, but when you're making songs like Koda Hammurabi and your album covers are all very striking, what was that part of the process like with him? Was he how did the both of you develop that and make it into this brand that then was able to continue? Because I guess other than arguably X Clan and maybe when Isis was doing it, before she became Lin Q, when she was Isis, like this type of imagery and this type of these type of references in music obviously were very atypical, especially in the in the era in which you were doing this. So what was that artistic development like between the two of you, and how did you evolve and develop that?
I always say things just really kind of flow. There wasn't like this thing to package, or brand what it is. Like we're both super big sci-fi fans. So we would always be watching, Dunes, and I'm a huge like Stephen King fan, hard Octavia Butler, like, so all these things are like very prevalent in my life and like what I talk about and what I love to do. And same with him. Like when we would be writing, we would have a movie playing, and it might be Fantastic Planet, you know? And so as I'm watching Fantastic Planet, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write about that. Or, you know, I'm looking at the concise yoga vashista on my bookcase, and I'm gonna write about that. Because for me, and what he understood and helped to kind of cultivate in me, or like encourage in me, is that I'm coming from this space fresh. I'm not an artist I'm not a rapper who have been doing this since I was 9 or 8 years old. So I don't have this kind of formula of how it's supposed to be done or what I'm supposed to be talking about. I am coming at it from the space of, as I'm rhyming, I'm gonna talk about the things that I'm into. I'm gonna find a way to incorporate those things into my music. And it didn't hurt that in Atlanta at the time, a lot of people were on, you know, the activist vibe, and a lot of people and I came of age artistically within like the cultural community. So like, as I was performing in these spaces, it was very fitting that I'd be talking about the things that I was into and that the community could vibe to as well. So it was affirmational. I mean, it was affirming, that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. I was talking about what I was supposed to be talking about, because it was being received and it was resonating with folks. And I was like, okay, but this is me. So it set the standard early on that I don't change who I am for marketability or whatever. And I talk about that a lot as well. You know, just talking about, like, you should be, if I look at you personally and compare that person to your artist's persona, they may not be exactly the same, but I should see elements that are reflective in both, in both sides of you, both expressions of you. And so it was important for me for that to be the case for me. But I think we both had a love for like albums. Like when I remember, like, my parents had this huge album collection, and I would just pour over, like, every detail of an album was really important to me, from the aesthetic to the imagery to the liner notes and all of that. And I particularly love like the 70s albums, and I wasn't like super into like funk and stuff like that, but I love like their wardrobes and, out there like Sun Ra, and I loved all of that like kind of imagery. And I was like, if I'm going to come in here and shake things up, I'm going to do things on my terms. And I loved what they were doing. I loved that they had this team, and as small as our team was, Sa-Roc and Soul Messiah, we had a team of like-minded individuals who wanted to create this thing, this kind of music. God Hop is what we called it, that expanded your thinking, expanded consciousness, that elevated the culture, that pushed the culture forward in a way that, we may have seen, through BAM, we may have seen through like, the Houdinis and X-Clans and Poor Righteous Teachers and Rakim and stuff like that. But I'm the next wave of that, carrying that on and expanding it. So.
In the beginning, hip-hop was ruled by the East Coast. Then the West Coast rose to prominence thanks to gangster rap.
Straight out of Compton, crazy motherfucker named Ice Cube.
Hip-hop changed the world. Gangster rap changed the narrative.
I'm representing for the gangsters all across the world.
And then changed the world again.
Cause I'll come and take your life away.
The history of gangster rap features unheard stories, unseen photos and documents, all with exclusive interviews from the founders and players who shaped gangster rap.
I think a real gangster rapper has to scare you a little bit.
The history of gangster rap, written by veteran rap journalist Soren Baker. In stores now.
Yo, what up? This is DJ Quick. Be sure to pick up my homeboy Soren Baker's book, The History of Gangster Rap, if you really want to know what we do.